Hello, this is Gerald Van. In the previous video, I quickly mentioned the word time, and I also made the quick remark that according to the organization and orientation that I have of every letter with a specific position somewhere in time and space, I also said at that point, it, with a remark, it was quite funny that the word time starts with a letter which clearly has a starting point in space, not in time, while the last letter, is about timing itself. So the conclusion is about timing, but there's a kind of organization in that word that is a bit intriguing, and I think, maybe it's a good time, yeah, to analyze that word, but again, I need some explanations and context and so on as well, because the concept of the orientation itself, I mean the geometrical orientation that we generally use in space, it works different once you have the element of time there, and yeah, I have to explain that how that changes, how you go from space to time to a contextual frame in which you can organize time and space. And of course, that also needs a bit explanation, so that's a good opportunity to do so. And therefore, I have to speak for the first time, or for one of the first times, about these extra orientations that we use when we need an orientation in time, in a time context, or an orientation in the contextual frame of time and space that organize itself. You need different concepts. You need, and that I have to explain in this video. The first thing, of course, which we do is to show you also in the scheme, because you can still fall back on this scheme where you can have all the letters with its specific orientations resumed in a few words there, where they are in balance in the system. In our system, it's a kind of self-organization system where we use and pinpoint really logical steps from space to time to the bigger context. As you can see on the left, it's just watching and using all the elements, not just up, down, and so on, the very quick ones, the very quick dualistic elements, but also the elements that have that self-organization aspect in them, that has an openness there, has an uncertainty there, so that you can add extra elements at that point. So there, and I already explained that in the previous video. So, but the first thing you see and and so on is space, and it's always space. You look into space and you try to organize a starting point. That's what you first do, and that starting point for time is also in space in t. The other letters all in the middle, so all already a reference to something that is moving, something that is changing. It is somewhat related in that balance about trying to organize that time. So how is that time organized is very interesting when we analyze the letters, where these positions are and what kind of combinations they make, what kind of organization they make. And I first make it very general, very much about the orientation itself and the balance. I look at that, and then I will explain the geometrical aspects of that, and then you know what it means and how it is organized, how this organization works. But you also already see it there. It already focuses towards organizing something that moves and changes, which are all the letters there in the middle, in spatial frame, in a time frame, and in the contextual frame, all of them. But we first have the letter T, which is the letter which is used to organize our orientation in space a little bit better, and even time organize itself from space, from this first focus. That's because I'm not going to say why. It is the the frame in which we start from to be objective, to name objects, to see the objects, to see the starting points clearly enough. The next letter is E. That is then the general frame that at this point we don't know how that will be balanced out, but that will always be about these ideas that play along in the background, and that will make a change there, that will have an influence there. But still now it's all abstract. When we continue to organize it a little bit, so I have it in the readable order: the T, the I, the M, the A, T in the spatial frame, A in the context as a contextual idea, M the letter that expresses extensions, as you could see in the previous scheme, and the last letter will be the conclusion that it is about something that is timed. So we're already a little bit closer, but we still don't see the organization there. We only see the order, so we already know we have a function that we start and look for in space. We try to coordinate it, we measure it, and we measure it, of course, in time. That's our differentiation. And here with the right balance of sizes. Preferably, I don't like to use the general frame where they have the three distances and three different distinctions of space, time, and context. I don't like to use that very often, simply because beside that, it doesn't give you much more an idea, except from the general frames, how much differences there are. But I make the resume, and then I go into detail how we could actually come to a better understanding. Here with this quick distinction of differences, we know it starts from space, in which a new idea comes to, where it is extended, and that will lead to the concept of what is time. So that will decide it. This is too vague. So let's go to that space where it all starts, and we'll use the idea how we make a form in space by using the geometry, of course. And in geometry you have very clear coordinating points and positions, and later with time arrows and so on, spaces in which it belongs and so on, focus that we focus upon. And as a starting point we have the letter T, and this letter T should also be a little bit more specific, not just the up direction. It's also already a little bit away from the center, so we use it also as that point which is up, and to formulate a little bit better how big it is. So with the center we just say, okay, that's it, we have something. And with the T we say, yeah, but what is that something? Oh yeah, it has it has these functions, it has these elements, and so that's why you see in the T also the way up, and also it deals with what's already hanging to it as extensions, as how it looks like, and so on. So it's not just, it is a point in space, but it's also a point in space with a reference to the features, what you can see at that point. But generally, actually, so every letter in space is in a three-dimensional space. That makes it more clear. And the next letter that we have, we first finalize the word time itself as letters. We hear it as time. So the second letters that are, or second letter or letters that are used as an orientation that we hear is, except that maybe I underestimated the h part a little bit. The ta is there as well as a double A. So I'll put that in the background because that will help us to orientate ourselves. We hear that, so here you have that T and double A. If it's just ta, that's the form, how that fits geometrically with this combination of sounds as an orientation. And the y to it is that line that dances in between. You can read that in my book as well. It's that line which doesn't disturb the full picture, but it's there as a materialization of actually the how this works well together. So with the wave, it's quite well expressed actually. So that will be our helpful tool in the background, the oral tool there. That's the oral part of the word that I will use in the background. But if I really use the geometrical aspect of the 3 times 3 dimensions, let's say frames, this one of the frames is in a horizontal cube, the other in a vertical cube, and the other in a diagonal cube. I will explain these cubes very easily, in a more easy way, I mean, but that's basically what you have then with that vertical line towards it. You know where the E inserts, actually, that's what expresses the E well. So you have already T and I expressed as I, so we have this I in the background as well. So that we have already some geometry to start from, only if it's only 2 words. But this cube I have to explain a little bit, because now it's abstract, you think it's a fantasy, but no, it is based upon a geometrical aspect that is important to understand. And because when we see our world, the 3-dimensional world, what we see on Earth, let's say on a flat platform that we see on Earth, that's our 3-dimensional space, which from all the things that we see immediately. As soon as we compare 2 different spaces with different conditions, we take these 2 spaces apart and compare them, and that's already, it is comparable already to just 2 different moments in time. And these moments are taken out of the moments that you have at certain points, seen from space also, but in a vertical way. You create an extra 2-dimensional double frame in which you time the things, so that in a way you say, okay, here's just one condition with moments, it looks like that, and here's another one also in space, and I have them. So I have this extra frame of orientation to orientate myself upon, which you can pinpoint by the moments to take out the conditions which are expressed with the vertical. And then you still have this next 3-dimensional frame as well, which explains the things which appear and disappear at certain points, which come in at certain points and disappear at certain points. And that decides the moments when something happens and when something does not happen, and why something needs to happen, and all these things. Until now, you can understand the concept, but not the geometrical one, but that will come next. I will put them next to each other. So the foundation, the first foundation is actually our spatial frame, basically as a constant axis. There's one constant axis of a horizontal line. So the 3-dimensional plane has 3 axes, so the horizontal, vertical, and diagonal, onto a fixed axis of the horizontal. That is my theory describing as well. It's because we have this flat Earth plane, this linear perspective in which we can lay in also the linear time, and when we see something now, at another moment it will look different, but we always look at the moments now upon the horizontal plane. It's that first dimension foundation of space. And even when you move your angle or you move in time, it could be a move in time, but it's basically still based upon the same axis, which is in balance at that point on a horizontal plane. Different is already when we will have differences, also in when we see them, the differences happening at some point or another, or at some point in time, at a certain time, there are things that are different, and they are temporarily different, or they are highlighted at certain points. All these aspects, we need time for it. After the first dimension of the plane horizontal frame in which everything looks actually the same, it's that time aspect with vertical moments which decides that things look different or are temporarily different at certain moments. That's that second dimensional axis that you need. The third axis is even more specific. It's in total it's also like a three-dimensional axis world, but it is very specific that it just says not only like, okay, I have a certain moment where something is occurring longer, or it's different, or we have certain moments. No, they are. It's even more specifying, like in a three-dimensional world, where you can specify very much not only when something is happening, how much it is happening, where it is happening, and at a certain point, the only point of a highlight can be taken out also, where you say, no, this is the only moment where it really has to be there. It has to be there at that specific space and place and timing. And that's what the last frame always does. From a vertical position, it sees all these variations of appearing and disappearing, and it decides also geometrically and mathematically what is making it appear and disappear. It has these kinds of influence, which I will later show you in the word time as well. So it can be very specific. I see, okay, now I know the specific moment where I have my peak value in time and in space, and this is the moment of now that I will work for that I have to reach that point. Now I see the reality, what there should be also be added as a new aspect. Most of the time something new comes in, a new highlight comes in, and it's only there at that moment. So the E, which is the vertical point on the diagonal axis, so that's why it's a bit confusing, because sometimes you can sense it from, okay, I can also describe it with the diagonal. No, it is the vertical from the diagonal differences, and the I or the E decides what is the correct moment to insert it, and to go and insert it, and to go towards the highlight until you have it completely. So that you prepare also something with an idea. You have an impulse, drive to get to do something until you have that highlighting point and can make the right influence with E. That's what the E expresses. Once more, I explained a little bit more these three extra axis dimensions. So the first one on top, as you can see, and I will use an example also with words. It's much more easy to simply have an example with words. If we would use certain vowels from each of the categories, we have three categories, one in space, one in time, and one in context. And these are the three cubes of orientation as well. We have a vowel for space, which is A, a vowel for time, which is O or E, depending on if you want a horizontal or vertical emphasis, and the vowel of context, or E. And that I will do with same start frame, and I will also end with that frame. I will have the T, and I end with the T, and I'll use the A here. So what do I have? I leave a little bit space between it, or the H, and I have the word that. That is an orientation. If you look it up and think about it, what is the orientation? You keep the orientation in space, and you go simply from one place to another place without changing anything, and that's that. So that is very fitting and very understandable. When I use a vowel from the time frame, I could use O or could use E. I will use O I take the moment out, so I have one moment here and one moment there. They are both different, but I express them with the time within the time frame. So this time frame will decide. Okay, I have here one moment, and it goes also from this moment to that moment, not just from that place to that place, but from that moment to that moment. And what is that in that word tot? Is a Dutch word. It means until. What does until means? Yes, until that time moment. So it is also correct. So of course you can understand it. Why you need this frame to understand it, and you have this time frame as well. You could understand it, I think, easily. And if you express it even from the if you have this orientation from where you also decide all these moments, and you express it even like that on this time frame, you can even see it almost too clearly that you go from one moment to the next moment and describe to what moment that is. And so until where? Until that moment. It's almost a perfect expression of it. So after first dimension of space, the two dimensions of time, it's still within one scope of three-dimensional vision of directions. Why is it not just simply said, okay, it's about three dimensions with a time aspect? It is a bit more complex than that, because with words, they exist at only a certain time. So you have to calculate from where does it start to exist and from where does it disappear. So in that way, it is also moving away. These axes in three dimensions are things that move away, and then they appear, and then they disappear. So they are openings, let's say, in a three-dimensional space frame in which time decides which things exist for a certain time or not. So it is a geometrical frame in 3 times 3 dimensions, I will also say, but that's the most complex thing to work out if you want to see it from that angle. But just see them as 3 moving axes, the things that moved, and once they move and they match together, it appears in space, or it appears in time, or it appears at a certain space and time combination in the last category. And that's what the last cube actually, or vision actually, or axis point, additional axis point actually decides. A diagonal frame says also, no, I'm very specific. Here it has to start to appear. It didn't exist before, but now it's needed. I will insert it. I will insert it there. It's an insertion with certain conditions towards the timing, not just like looking at from what is there in the what is there at this moment. I was here seeing a message on the screen. No, it is so I was suddenly distracted. The E is I have to go back to my screen. Basically, the best way to remember the last frame of context is from this moment something appears and it's needed. That's more or less what you will have with a letter like E. So you have it will go to that axis point, and the axis point will be an axis point in time and in space, and something of a new idea can come forward for it. You access it also in another space, in another time, in a way as well. You insert something there, or you can do something extra there, and so on. So let's go and use a word for that. I said already it's the letter E. Does it exist? T to E to T with an E. Yeah, tit. The tit exists indeed, and that will also be an access point to different times, different spaces, a different time place. In a way, you could say, now you can use it, now you cannot use it, and now you don't, and now you surely don't. Don't touch it. Okay, but we were at the second letter, the E, so we have already the starting point in space to look for something functional. We have an E, that access point of influence, where we find the influence and define where things will appear and when they will appear. So I'm still curious, when will time appear after a spatial orientation? And the next letters will also describe that. And we still have in the background, of course, this I structure, because that's how it has been pronounced. So I'll keep that in mind to organize my mindset and understand why, in God's name, that you have attention to a spatial point, and to something that is inserted that might do something and make something different. What will it be? The next letter will be M. M, what is the M? M is actually all the extensions that are extending even further. It can go in all directions. It's like water, let's say, the M, and it goes into all diagonal also directions, in all kinds of directions, and it extends to its limits. Actually, that's what the M does. So you see this angle coming in and spreading into different options in a way also, where it all can go to. And if you compare it back to this, to the G here, you also create through this M a condition. And the condition more or less says, okay, the condition is I have something comes in and I have an extension, materialistic extension. If there's more extension, the energy here, or the wave here, will be, if it's less material or less intense, the material will be less and the wave will be smaller, or otherwise a wave will be longer. And that is also all about the time already, because the last letter we know is the conclusion. It will happen during a certain time, so there can be can be an evolution, it can be changes, but the M actually decides if this result in the end is big or small. And we always have, it's best that you also focus upon the beginning and the ending. So you have a beginning and an ending in the time frame with an E. You have a starting point and an ending point. So you start from a certain size and you end in a certain size, and you follow the full process, how much is changing there. That's the letter E. Compared again to this wave, we have here three kinds of waves that are derived from the E to M, and this gives also three different variations, the three different pushes in which the wave becomes shorter or longer. At the same time, you could also say, oh, my time frame will, my time periods will also become smaller or larger, and that describes actually somewhat well how we have to understand time starting from space. There are certain things in space that move forward, that come to it. If these extensions get larger, it will take a longer time to finalize itself. It is if it's more compressed, it's smaller, and you have a smaller time. So time can be calculated probably in a comparable formula based upon this idea as well. But I'm not going deeper into that. You have already some idea how we have to understand the letter combinations of time, in which the M extensions will decide if we create in the end a shorter or longer time. And I hope these made it a bit more clear, and also I hope also the whole concept of geometry behind it, how the geometry of orientations upon letters works, is also already a little bit more clear. Okay, if not, just tell me. Maybe I have to rework it a little bit more with a more clear definitions. Okay, thanks again for watching. Bye bye.